So we've had a pretty good week in the calves house. We've got no calf on a bottle, everybody's on a bucket, which makes things a lot easier. We've had a couple, the first two down the bottom, that took us about 2 weeks nearly to get them off the bottle onto a bucket. It makes things a lot easier then, because we buy calves every week. We can spend a bit more time with the new calves rather than having to run back to the ones that are on bottles. We've had a couple, this boy, he's called Sick Boy, which is a bit of a joke, but he's got a bit of a fungal infection in his navel, so we're treating that. He's having some pen and strep, and he is a bit swollen around the navel as well, so that's something to really keep a close eye on. My boyfriend tends to do that, because he knows a bit more about it, well, a lot more about it than I do. He'll feel the navels of them, and any that have got a sort of hard lump, a large lump there, we'll treat it then with a 3-day course of pen and strep and some Metacam if it's a bit sore. And he was very happy to have his rug put back on. He wasn't very happy when it was taken off in the first place. And we don't mind. He's quite happy with his blanket on. So he'll have his last jab of pen and strep today. It is starting to heal up, and we'll see how he gets on with that. That is something quite important to check, because you can get navel ill. We had a calf with navel ill, who obviously didn't have his umbilical dipped at birth, and when he was a few months old, his whole navel and stomach area actually ruptured, and we had to have him put to sleep pretty quickly, which was horrible. So a little thing like something like that being missed at birth can actually be very serious for them further down the line, and that was quite a horrible thing to witness. Luckily we had somebody quite close by who put him to sleep very quickly, but literally the stomach lining and everything just completely ruptured. So my boyfriend tends to check the navels regularly to make sure. We had one last year, she's called Amy, who had umbilical hernia, which luckily when she was 6 months old completely healed up on its own. When you pushed around, it was a hole big enough to put your thumb inside, which meant that the stomach, the insides were coming through the hole in the herniation in the wall. So these two we actually bought last week, weaned. So we put them straight into the weaned house next door, and the little one in particular became extremely distressed. Normally after 3 days they'll shout and call a little bit, but they normally calm down after 3 days and sort of think, right, okay, this is home now, and settle into a new routine. She was actually getting worse, if anything, and was pacing up and down the gate, calling pretty much 24 hours a day, and we were getting quite concerned that she was going to get very sick, lose her voice, get a sore throat, which then can lead on to pneumonia. So we made the decision to actually bring them both, her and her mate, he's a lot older actually, back into the calves house. I think it was 4 days ago, and actually give them some milk. You've never seen a calf so happy to see milk in your life. And since then, they're like two completely different animals. In fact, they call less than the ones that have been in the shed from the start, actually. So we've got them on milk twice a day for now. We'll wean him off pretty quickly, and he can go back next door now he's settled down a bit. But we will actually keep her on twice a day milk and do a slow reduction wean with her, just so we know that she's actually eating corn, because I think that was part of the problem, was they hadn't actually been eating corn. So, which is something that I have had before. I actually prefer to give my calves corn from the very beginning, only a little handful at a time, and they will nibble at it a little bit, but as time goes on, by the time you're actually starting to wean them, they're eating a good half a calf bucket to a bucket, calf bucket full of nuts actually a day. So when they're weaned, they're actually used to eating a big amount of nuts, and they go on to be absolutely fine afterwards. but we don't think these two had actually ever been fed calf nuts before. They're actually starting to nibble at the calf nuts, which is great. So when they are going to be weaned, they'll be eating nuts and they won't be starving hungry, which they were. These 3 down here are actually new, very new. We got those as well on Wednesday. Today's Monday. That's Tank. She's a fantastic Charlie. They're all drinking really well from the bucket now, eating plenty of nuts. The one on the end there, she's still a little bit nervous, so very calm and gentle around her. In particular, she does not like being bedded up, so I just have to sort of do it as quick as I can, and not just throw it sort of in on top of her, because it just scares her. But she's drinking her milk fine. They're all drinking their milk fine. These two are on once a day. He was a bit poorly a few weeks ago and had to have antibiotics, so he's just got his rug on because it's actually very cold at the moment, sort of near freezing at night, so that's just keeping him a little bit warm. Apart from that, we've actually had a really good week with the calves. I say a little bit of illness. This little fella here, he had a temperature the other day as well. He wasn't too bad in himself, but he wasn't 100%, so he's had Alamycin and Metacam. And Florence here last week had quite a high temperature actually. Sort of no real visible signs, he just seemed a little bit off and actually had a temperature of over 106, so he was actually quite poorly. But after Alamycin and Metacam again, he's been absolutely fine since. Which shows how important having a good thermometer is. If I get a calf that's normally drinking well and then leave some milk in the bottle, in the sort of bucket, you'll normally find that there's something not right. And quite often they look well in themselves, and the only sort of visible sign is that they haven't actually drunk all of their milk. They may have drunk half of it or 3/4, but they've left some, which is unusual. Just check their temperature, you'll be surprised. We've had a couple that have had a temperature of over 106, and that was literally the only thing that was different, was they'd left a little bit of milk in the bottom of their buckets. The thermometer that I use is literally just a cheap digital thermometer. The end does get sterilised. And anything over 103 I will treat with antibiotics. Depending if their breathing's bad, then I'll use something like Florchem, Resflor, a stronger antibiotic. But if their breathing's fine and they seem, pretty perky in themselves, then I'll treat them with normally 10 ml of Alamycin and 2.5 to 3 ml of Metacam. Depending on how big they are, and that works really well, and normally within a few hours they're normally feeling a lot brighter in themselves. And then I'll leave a rug on for a couple of weeks, again depending on the weather. At the moment it's very cold, very wet, very windy, so we're in no rush to take the rugs off, as long as we're not desperately in need of one. The wean calves next door are all doing really well, all eating well, eating a lot of food. Hello. We've got 3 newly weaned calves in there, so they're shouting a bit because as soon as they hear the milk trolley going, they think it's breakfast time. But apart from that, the rest of them are doing really, really well, touch wood. And then Wednesday we'll be back at market again, probably buy another 5. We're up to 32 calves at the moment, and we're hoping to do 50 this year. We did 44 last year, but doing it in these smaller batches, with my health being quite bad, has helped a lot. And it also means I can give the sort of 5 new calves a lot more of my time and attention, getting them on the bucket, making sure that everything's fine, there's nothing wrong. So this week we'll be doing the next lot of dehorning, vaccinating with the Rispoval intranasal, and as always, all the new calves get 7 ml of Alomycin as soon as they come onto the farm, just to kill any sort of bugs or viruses that they may have.